My guest now is Dr. Sander Klous. Sander is the Managing Director of Big Data Analytics at KPMG in the Netherlands, and he's a professor in Big Data Ecosystems at the University of Amsterdam. He also holds a PhD in High Energy Physics, and our topic today is leveraging the opportunity of big data. Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about this idea of invisible barbed wire, the notion that the data that is collected about you and I can be put into algorithms to guide our behaviour. And so the idea is that this is already happening, but I'm not aware that I'm surrounded by barbed wire. Yeah. I'm an agent of free choice, Sander.
You wish. Yeah. No, so invisible barbed wire is actually a term that was coined by Evgeny Morozov, one of the philosophers that reflects a lot on big data and what's happening around it. And basically you can see it already when, for example, you're trying to use the subway system, right? So when you try to enter a station, these days you cannot do that anymore without a ticket, because there are these machines that you have to pull your ticket through before you can actually enter the station. If you compare that to 10, 15 years ago, you could actually just go in and step on a subway without a ticket. It was your choice. You might be caught for driving illegally, but they would allow you to make that choice. So they are impacting your decision on buying the ticket or not. Moreover, they are impacting your decision on where to enter the station, because you can only enter it through these gates. So that's an example of actually a system that is obligatory, that is not allowing you to make any other decision. But even if you are allowed to make a different decision, you're still sort of slavishly following algorithms. Take, for example, the navigation system in your car. So how often does it happen that you actually follow the instruction on your navigation system, and then suddenly you find yourself in front of a blocked road because your navigation system didn't know that road was blocked? And still you're just trying to follow that route and not making any conscious choice of doing something else. So even if the systems are not obligatory, if they let you have the illusion of free choice, you're still sort of willinglessly, slavishly following these systems around. And that's what invisible barbed wire is around.
At the moment, though, I mean, if you go online, like I do, and you look at soft furnishings, the algorithm is pretty clumsy. Mm-hmm. It kind of follows you around like a bad sales assistant saying, did you want to buy the pillow? Come back, get the pillow. That's not invisible to me.
No, exactly. So that might be the one thing that is actually wrong with this analogy, that the invisible part is not true yet. So that annoyance that you're feeling every time that you see that advertisement and you think, I just bought that thing, so why is it still showing that to me? That will go. I mean, as soon as we are getting better at these algorithms, then you won't see that at all. You will still feel the convenience. So they will still impact your decisions, probably much more even than they do now. But you will just not notice it anymore because the annoyance is gone. So that basically gives us a time window of 5 years, 10 years that we have to think about what we find acceptable. What are the norms and values that we want to apply on these algorithms when they are trying to impact our decisions. And that's a choice that we have to make as society. First of all, what are these boundaries? And second of all, how are we actually going to implement them and how are we going to control it?
So that's your starting point when you're talking about big data and who collects it and water utilities thinking about using it, is thinking about, well, what kind of values and ethics and norms do you want to bring to the collection of this material?
Yeah, I think there are clearly two sides. So one is the convenience factor and probably other beneficial factors like efficiency that are surrounding the theme of big data, and everybody's asking how can this help to be more convenient, to be more efficient, etc. So that's one side of it. And the other side of it is how can we do this in a trustworthy way, in a way that we as society are comfortable with what is happening, especially when we are moving into this smart society where sensors are all around us, algorithms are all around us, we're stepping into self-driving cars, and we are really handing ourselves over to these algorithms. So then the trusted element becomes really key in a successful being successful.
If my water utility in the future wants to use my data, my neighbour's data, the society's data to be more efficient, I might like it, but does that matter if it makes my life more convenient? Does it matter if I don't trust them? It doesn't matter if I don't trust the bank. Does convenience win in the end?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit like if you compare it to the financial sector at the moment, we are still using banks and we are still using insurance companies, even though we have our doubts by the way that they are handling our money. But the convenience factor is so big, and in fact, you don't have a choice often. I mean, your salary is just put at a bank.
You can't take it in cash.
No, exactly. So you just have to use it, and in a sense, data is probably going in the same direction. I mean, we have our doubts by the large organizations that are using our data. On the other hand, they provide the convenience. I mean, if you go on Facebook and you want to share your pictures with your family, it's a push of a button. That's a convenience that we've never had before. So that's driving large fractions of our behavior. So yeah, if I take the comparison with how we are going with our financials, I think in the end we just have to get used to living in a society where data is used, where algorithms are used. That still doesn't mean that we have to accept it blindly. We still need to take the responsibility and implement this in a way that we as a society are comfortable with.
Let's talk about what data is good data. Is there such a thing in your view as bad data?
I mean, for a long time we've been considering data quality as the most important issue that is around, and you won't hear me say that data quality is not important. I think it's very important. If you send me a bill, you better make sure that the bill is right, because otherwise I'm going to be displeased. So data quality is essential for these kind of things. On the other hand, we start to find out that data quality isn't everything, and that quantity of data can be similarly important. For example, if I want to know the average heart rate of a group of 100 people, I can just take the first 5 of the 100 and I can measure the heart rate. And then based on the average of the 5 people, I can say, that will probably be the average heart rate of the entire group. If I want to improve that, if I want to have a better estimate of the average of the entire group, I don't need to change the way I measure it. I can still measure it in the same way as I did with the first 5 people. I just need to take more people. So by collecting more data, you sometimes get a more accurate result. And there are various examples where that's kind of increasing the amount of data will help you to improve your end result. So yeah, quantity and quality are both important.
For people in the water industry, there's all sorts of data sets they can draw on that can interconnect, from weather patterns and flood patterns and all the rest of it. When you're digging into those data sets, how important is it in your mind to understand that if you know that there's a relationship between two data sets, that you can really exactly pinpoint what the causal relationship is, rather than just saying, well, those two things seem to correlate?
Yeah. So that's a very important point, actually. We know it as causality versus correlation. So causality is a relationship between two variables, and you actually know what that relationship is. You know cause and effect. A correlation is also a relationship between two variables, but then you don't know why that relationship exists. And sometimes a correlation is enough, and sometimes you really need to dig through and understand the causality before you can come up with a good decision. So a very good example for the correlation is in Toronto. They were studying immature babies, and it turned out that if a baby got an infection, then 24 hours before they got the infection, their life signals turned stable. So their heart rate became stable, their respiration became stable, the temperature became stable.
Everything looked good.
Everything seemed to look even better than normal, and it was a totally not understood effect. But yeah, now they are acting on it. So they are actually treating babies with an infection 24 hours earlier when these life signals start to become stable, even though they didn't understand why it was correlated with each other. They would still do that. and they're saving lives with that. So in this case, the correlation was extremely important to act on. In other situations, I mean, I've been involved in projects where we were predicting credit card usage by banks. And we thought that we identified very interesting effects for the bank, and we were actually identifying features of people that were switching credit cards to different banks and how you could get them back. And it turned out that we completely misunderstood the feature. And when we started digging through it, turned out that these people actually never left the bank, even though we thought they did. So there it was absolutely crucial to do that advanced analysis to understand what the cause and effect was before we advised the bank on how to operate. So yeah, there is no clear rule that says you always need a correlation, you always need a causality. There's no technology that is actually helping you with determining if you need a correlation or a causality. Basically, there's only one way that works, and that's just hiring experienced people, hiring really good data scientists, and they can, based on their experience, based on their intuition almost, make the decision when a result is good enough to take a certain decision.
Finally, if you have this data, it's almost like you need the people who are going to receive it in the industry to start thinking and working in different ways. Mm-hmm. How would you characterise the sort of cultural changes that you need to have when you're being led, in a way, by this stream of data that's coming through?
So most of the people think that the biggest challenge in handling big data is actually technical, where my experience is that it really isn't. The real challenge in big data is an organizational challenge. When you work with big data, you want to be experimental, you want to try different things, and the things that succeed you want to implement in your organization, and the things that don't, you basically want to ignore. And if you're doing that, then you actually need an organization that is agile enough to adopt these changes, and that means that you need sort of self-controlling teams that are really responding to different kind of situations that are created by these insights in data. And that means that hierarchical structures in your organization, like we are classically used to implement, they don't really work. You need to have these self-supporting teams that have a lot of responsibility. There's actually quite a good book about it, written by a General McChrystal. He fought in Afghanistan and he fought the Taliban. And he found out that his organizational structure in the army wasn't really working because he couldn't change fast enough and adapt to the changing circumstances, basically. And the Taliban could do that much better because they were organized in this cell structure, all these independent small cells operating. So basically what he's saying is, if you want to be able to handle this kind of flexibility, you need to organize yourself more like a terrorist organization.
Teams of teams.
Teams of teams, yeah.
Like the Taliban.
Like the Taliban.
That's a cheery note on which to end. It's been lovely talking to you, Sander.
Thank you.